Another one of the things that we're going to feature today, talking cannabis, hemp and cannabis, is hemp and the great history of hemp in this area. And another guest today is Ben Masel, who is been studying this for many decades and one of the biggest authorities on hemp in Wisconsin.
Thomas Jefferson once remarked that the greatest contribution one could make to one's country, or among the greatest contributions, was the introduction of a useful new plant to its agriculture. Which begs the question, what do you call somebody who removes a useful plant from your country's agriculture? While we've been working on the medical marijuana bill for the last couple of years, some work we'd done on agricultural hemp kind of went and bore fruit while we weren't even looking. The Assembly Agriculture Committee, about 3 weeks ago, I believe, passed Assembly Bill 206, which would once again allow Wisconsin farmers to cultivate hemp for fiber, feed, oilseed, etc. purposes.
Yeah.
Defines hemp as possessing less than 0.3% THC. Passage of this bill, assuming we can get it through the full legislature, and that's sort of a question as to whether the Speaker will now schedule a floor vote, despite the near unanimous vote in the Agriculture Committee. But won't immediately allow farmers to grow because they would still need federal licenses. It's a little bit dicier situation in that the President has said that he would not interfere with state medical marijuana production, but they've not made a similar commitment towards state licensed agricultural hemp. In fact, the two North Dakota farmers, one of them the Republican Speaker of the State Assembly of North Dakota, Dave Monson, who have their state licenses and sought to, I guess it's now 3 years ago, get a federal license to put in their first crop. Well, the DEA never processed their application. They took the $4,000 application fee and have neither approved it nor denied it. Those two farmers then filed suit in federal court seeking an order that the DEA process their application one way or the other so that if denied they could appeal, or if approved they could get a crop in. And they recently lost their federal appeal, so their applications are still pending. Would not actually take new action by the Congress to allow farmers to grow hemp. Long since the original marijuana prohibition in 1937, farmers were issued licenses by the federal government, initially for a $100 fee. The last farmers to legally produce hemp were about 20 miles from here, the last mill in Brandon, Wisconsin. Those of you driving south, you can see the old smokestack still on the north edge of town. To your left off Route 59, is it? 49.
What town?
Brandon. It's the next town after Ribbon. So that mill continued operating until early '58, but the last crop was in '57. It took them through the end of the year to process the crop. There they were making at the very end upholstery binding twine, taking advantage of the unique strength of the cord from the outer bark of a hemp plant. They went under largely because they were competing with tropical fibers in countries where they were still paying essentially slave wages while they were paying good union scale up here. Eastern Europe continued. There's Hungarian twines, for instance, have been on the market all the way through. Even though they had marijuana prohibition, their laws are distinguished. My take is that this area would again be one of the major centers of the industry, mostly because we have a paper industry nearby. we found a U.S. Department of Agriculture Bulletin 404, written in 1916, which had reported that hemp out-yielded trees for paper 4-to-1. After popularizing this, kind of got a caveat to add. They were comparing hemp as a intensively grown row crop with trees as natural forest. Come the early 1920s, they had switched, because of the, once they'd wiped out all of the natural forest to use as paper, they started growing trees as a row crop as well. So they quickly tripled tree yields, and now they're close. So hemp's advantage will not be so much that it grows faster, although it may depending on local conditions, but that one, you have that stronger fiber which allows for a much higher percentage of recycled content without having the paper tear in the presses. My take is that in the modern era, at the present time, it would not so much replace trees as paper as complement them very nicely. And you'd obviously want to grow it close to the mill because hauling the hemp is a big deal. A year and a quarter ago, we have refounded the Wisconsin hemp order in Ripon. That had been, I'd found, the October 1917 proceedings of the founding of the hemp order as a trade organization of the Wisconsin industry. And one of the big projects they were setting out between 17 and 18, well, the guys using pickup trucks to move their hemp just a couple miles to the mill, because it's very bulky as raw hemp before it's processed, they weren't paying for the fuel. They ended up still using their horses and hay wagons. But one of the projects they set out was, let's design a truck with a really big back end and still a small front end, because you don't have to haul weight. And of course those trucks did come about, and they started moving it by 1920. One of the other real interesting characteristics, and I'm going to read this quickly. In 1911, this is the yearbook of the Wisconsin Agricultural Experiment Station at the UW. Hemp as a weed eradicator. Experiments have been conducted by the agronomy department on the value of hemp as a means of eradicating noxious weeds. On the state prison farm at Waupun, a field of 3.5 acres infested with crackgrass and Canada thistle was treated 2 years ago. The field was heavily manured. Following spring, it was sown with hemp at a rate of 1 bushel per acre and yielded over 2,100 pounds of fiber per acre, valued at $118. This treatment resulted in complete destruction of thistles and nearly complete annihilation of quackgrass. This is before chemical pesticides. We all know the downsides of using chemical pesticides. So that by the 50s, the very last license issued to grow hemp in Wisconsin was a couple of farmers in La Crosse County who had put it in not because they had anyone to sell the hemp to, because there was no mill, but simply to clear their field of Canada thistle so that they could go back to growing grains on it the following year instead of having to spray pesticides.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds green to me.
Dan,
Sounds green.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If this would actually go through, going into something like Walmart or something saying you want to buy hemp necklace or a bracelet, it would say like
Made in
Wisconsin
USA.
instead of China. That
Right.
would be great.
The law now allows the importation of finished hemp products. It doesn't actually allow them to be produced here. It's in this year of wondering where our manufacturing base has gone. The absolute dumbest move is to directly prohibit our domestic industries from competing with foreign sources. That's insane. Thank you much.